Aberlour Abunad. Most people walk into a liquor store looking for the smoothest bottle, which is exactly why they will never understand the raw power of Aberlour Abunad. This isn't your average watered-down Speyside malt tinted with artificial caramel. It is a legendary sherry bomb, bottled at cask strength, delivering the spirit exactly as it existed inside the wood. With most batches hovering around 120 proof, this liquid provides a concentrated punch of dark fruits that would make a casual drinker gasp for air. A true snob treasures this bottle because it is non-chill filtered, preserving the essential fatty acids that create a heavy, luxurious mouthfeel. When you pour 1.5 ounces, notice the deep mahogany hue. 100% natural color derived solely from Oloroso sherry butts without a single drop of E150A. Since every batch varies slightly, collecting the different numbers has become a competitive sport for those who value authenticity over consistency. The profile is a riot of Christmas cake and black cherries, where the high alcohol feels like a velvet-covered brick hitting your palate before the complexity of ginger and dark chocolate unfolds. At $100, it offers a flavor density that puts $500 marketing-heavy bottles to shame. Let it breathe in a Glencairn for 10 minutes before you transition from this sugar-driven explosion to the oily weight of our next Irish contender. Redbreast 12. Cask Strength. Watching someone order a shot of Jameson at a high-end bar is like watching a movie on a cracked phone screen. You get the gist, but you're missing the point. Snobs instinctively roll their eyes at triple distilled smoothness, because in the world of real flavor, smooth usually just means thin and boring. They crave the single pot still tradition, a uniquely Irish method using a mash of malted and unmalted barley to create a chemically complex spirit that refuses to be ignored. The cask-strength version of Redbreast 12 is the ultimate power move against easy-drinking stereotypes, sitting defiantly at 112 to 122 proof. Because it avoids all dilution, you aren't met with a watery burn. Instead, you experience a profoundly creamy, buttery texture that coats your tongue like liquid silk before a massive punch of black pepper explodes. This violent contrast between the oily mouthfeel and the spicy, pot-still kick is why aficionados obsess over every drop. Aged in a mix of Oloroso sherry and bourbon barrels, this whiskey offers deep notes of toasted nuts and dried apricots. For $90, this non-chill filtered masterpiece ensures every fatty acid remains in the bottle for that signature, chewy consistency. Pour 1.5 ounces into a tulip glass and let the shortbread scent prove that Ireland can produce spirits as hardcore as any Islay Scotch, leading directly into the strange, waxy world of the Highlands. Clinalish 14-year-old smooth is a dirty word in serious whiskey snobbery, where texture is the only holy grail that matters. While casual drinkers judge a spirit purely by its flavor, a true connoisseur looks for how the liquid behaves physically on the palate. This is the calling card of Clinalish 14, a Highland malt famous for a quality so bizarre it sounds almost unappealing. It is waxy. Snobs happily pay $75 because it feels like they are chewing on a high-end scented candle, a masterclass in distillation science where still oils are preserved to create a heavy, paraffin-like coating. This unique character results from a deliberate lack of cleaning, as the distillery intentionally leaves the gunk in their receiver tanks to maintain this specific profile. The tasting starts with bright coastal acidity, reminiscent of sea salt and crisp apples, but then the real magic happens. A thick, oily film of beeswax and honeyed malt begins to wrap around your tongue, creating a decadent barrier that makes the finish last for an eternity. It is a beautiful sensory contradiction, the freshness of the Scottish Highlands clashing with a heavy candle wax density. Bottled at 92 proof, Clinalish 14 serves as the prestigious backbone of Johnnie Walker Blue Label, but drinking it as a single malt is where true enthusiasts reside. It is non-chill filtered to protect that precious waxiness and provide structure without overwhelming the delicate fruit notes. If you want to impress, praise its industrial mouthfeel, as this bottle truly separates those wanting to get drunk from those experiencing liquid art before we head across the Atlantic for some American heat. Willett Family Estate. Bottled rye. Ditch the idea that American whiskey is just sweet corn and easy-sipping bourbon. Rye was the original fiery spirit of the American colonies, and Willett Family Estate is the bottle that resurrected that aggressive, vintage soul for the modern collector. While mass-produced ryes barely meet the legal 51% rye requirement, Willett's mash bill is designed to slap you awake with a sensory overload of sharp cloves, spicy cinnamon, and a chilling streak of fresh mint that cuts through the heat like a jagged blade. The real obsession for Snobs centers on the purple foil, indicating their single-barrel program. Since every bottle originates from one specific cask, the flavor profile is a ghost. Once a barrel is empty, that exact expression is lost to history forever. Usually bottled at cask strength around 115 proof, the spice remains unapologetic and thick. You aren't just buying a drink, you're capturing a singular moment in time where charred white oak and high rye spice collided to create a profile that can never be replicated. It remains the gold standard for those who find bourbon too cloying, providing a botanical finish that proves America does hardcore better than anyone. George T. Stagg. American whiskey reaches its absolute breaking point with George T. Stagg, a spirit so volatile it is legally classified as a fire hazard. While mainstream brands prioritize approachable sweetness, this heavyweight from the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection is aged for at least 15 years in the sweltering Kentucky heat to achieve terrifying potency. The result is a liquid often labeled hazmat because it frequently exceeds 140 proof, making it strictly illegal to carry onto a commercial airplane in the United States due to its extreme flammability. To drink Stagg is to survive a majestic disaster where the wood sugars and 70% ABV create a sensory overload of dark chocolate and aged leather. This isn't a bourbon you sip. It is a violent explosion of toasted oak and molasses that demands a few drops of water just to prevent your taste buds from being permanently cauterized. Carrying an MSRP of $99 that instantly hits $800 on the secondary market, it serves as a brutal reminder that most other bourbons are merely a dress rehearsal for this raw, unfiltered force of nature. Springbank 12. Cask strength. While modern distilleries surrender to automation, Springbank remains a stubborn fortress of handcrafted tradition in Campbelltown. They are the only Scottish operation performing 100% of production on site, including the grueling floor malting, where workers manually turn barley every few hours. This labor-intensive grit infuses the spirit with a legendary profile known as Campbelltown Funk, a polarizing, oily aroma of wet earth, old engine grease, and sea spray that smells more like a working shipyard than a luxury beverage. Bottled at cask strength around 110 proof, this 12-year-old expression is a masterclass in industrial balance. Because it is non-chill filtered and lacks added coloring, the pale gold liquid hides a deceptive weight. Each sip delivers a rich, industrial viscosity that clings to the palate, slowly revealing orange zest and a faint, dirty smoke. At $120, it is notoriously difficult to find, serving as a living relic of 19th century engineering, where the friction of copper stills and stone warehouse humidity create a profile that modern technology simply cannot fake. Laphroaig 10. Cask strength. Laphroaig 10 is the litmus test for Scotch lovers, and its cask strength version is the most aggressive iteration. While the standard is diluted to 80 proof, this raw beast is bottled at nearly 120 proof, amplifying the distillery's notorious medicinal character. It reeks unapologetically of iodine, hospital bandages, and burning peat moss, a scent so pungent that during Prohibition, Laphroaig was legally sold in American pharmacies as a medicinal spirit because authorities couldn't believe anyone would drink it for pleasure. A snob finds beauty in this brutality, viewing the reek of antiseptic and rotting seaweed as a spiritual experience. Unlike floral malts that seek to please, this whiskey seeks to offend. On the palate, the high alcohol acts as a vibrant conductor for massive surges of salt, black pepper, and cold wood ash that strip away the distractions of daily life. While ordinary people might use these notes to disinfect a wound, the elite use them to cleanse the soul. Priced at about $90, this non-chill filtered legend remains a staple for those who find drinkable whiskey an insult. When you serve a 1.5 ounces pour, the liquid is visibly oily. It is a visceral, saltwater-soaked punch to the senses that demands respect, offering a long finish of tar and medicinal herbs that lingers until the following morning. It is the liquid equivalent of a stormy night on a jagged coastline. Bruichladdich Octomore. Most peat-forward whiskies are content with subtlety, but Octomore is a deliberate assault on the human palate. It serves as the ultimate benchmark for peat heads, defined by a technical metric called ppm, phenol parts per million. While a standard smoky Scotch might sit at a respectable 35 parts per million, Octomore regularly shatters expectations by surging past 100 parts per million, with some experimental releases even eclipsing the 200 ppm mark. This isn't just smoke. It is a visceral experience that feels like chewing on a handful of smoldering charcoal in the middle of a salt spray storm on the Islay coast. Despite the astronomical phenol levels, the spirit remains shockingly elegant because of its tall, narrow stills. Bottled at cask strength, often exceeding 118 proof, it is non-chill filtered and presented with natural color in its iconic, sleek, opaque bottle. When you pour 1.5 ounces, the initial hit is pure campfire ash and barbecued brisket. But as the oil settles, a surprising sweetness of poached pears and vanilla emerges. It is a majestic, soot-covered contradiction that forces your senses to adapt or retreat, leaving a finish so persistent it feels like the ghost of a shipwreck is haunting your tongue. Chichibu Single Malt. In the hierarchy of Japanese whiskey, there is a massive divide between those who buy for the label and those who buy for the liquid. While noobs scramble to pay inflated prices for a bottle of Yamazaki just to show it off on social media, true snobs are quietly hunting for Chichibu. Founded in 2008 by Ichiro Akuto, the wizard of Japanese distilling, this small-scale operation focuses on perfection in every milliliter. Chichibu is the gold standard for meticulous, small-batch craftsmanship, where the use of rare Mizunara oak and locally grown barley creates a profile of staggering complexity. At a retail entry point of $200, and often triple that at auction, Chichibu is a masterclass in balance. It is typically bottled at a robust 96 proof or higher, ensuring the spirit's integrity isn't lost to dilution. On the palate, you aren't met with the mass-market floral notes. Instead, you get a dense, layered symphony of sandalwood, incense, and tropical fruit that feels hand-polished by a master craftsman. It is a shame-inducing reality check for those chasing commercial brands, proving that true prestige is found in the obsessive attention to detail rather than a globally recognized logo. This is the Insider's Bottle, a liquid trophy for those who truly understand the art of the blend. SMWS, Scotch Malt Whisky Society, the final boss of whiskey snobbery, isn't a brand at all. It is a code. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society, SMWS, removes the bias of marketing by stripping away distillery names and replacing them with a numeric system like 29.280. This forces the drinker to evaluate the spirit based purely on its sensory merit rather than the prestige of a famous house. It is the ultimate expression of confidence where the liquid must stand entirely on its own, unburdened by the psychological influence of a billion-dollar brand name or a fancy crystal decanter. These bottles are strictly cask strength, non-chill filtered, and natural color, representing the rawest possible form of Scotch. When you join the society, you are paying for the privilege of drinking a single cask expression, meaning that when those 200 bottles from that specific barrel are gone, that exact flavor profile is extinguished from the universe. It is the peak of gatekeeping in the best way possible. By the time you're deciphering codes to find a 125 proof gem, you have reached the nirvana of whiskey consumption, where you drink with your nose and palate rather than your eyes. You're no longer a mere consumer. You have officially become a guardian of the craft, immune to the siren song of flashy labels and hollow marketing. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of hardcore spirits, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. Are you a snob or just a casual sipper? Your support keeps this channel alive and allows us to explore even more obscure bottles. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, drink better, not just more.